Good? Good? All right. Okay. Thank you all for joining us here this morning. I want to acknowledge, first of all, a few people who are here joining me up here today. My Deputy County Executive, Jeff McCann, my Deputy County Executive for Health and Human Services, Corinda Crosdale, and Robert Franklin, the Monroe County Chief Financial Officer and Director of Finance. So I'm going to get right to it. This was a challenging budget to prepare. We all know the impacts that COVID-19 has had on people and families throughout our community, across the state, and across the nation. It caused uncertainty, and that uncertainty is not yet over, not from a public health standpoint and not from an economic standpoint. To start, I want to thank our community. It was through your efforts when we were staying at home, keeping a safe 6-foot distance from others when you had to go out, washing your hands and wearing masks in public, that we were able to flatten the curve. But we're not through with the pandemic yet. But we have proven that we are a caring, loving community that works together to confront our challenges, to take care of each other and keep our most vulnerable safe and healthy. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment here to thank all of the hard-working Monroe County employees who have continued to do their work with tireless dedication throughout a tumultuous year. Whether they work in the Public Health Department, Human Services, Economic Development, the Veterans Service Agency, or any other county department, our county employees have responded to this health crisis with unprecedented professionalism, continuing to provide our community with the vital government services people depend on. And I want to thank each of you on the county team. Your work means more to this community than you will ever know. As for this budget, I also want to particularly thank Bob Franklin and his team at the Office of Management and Budget for their tireless work putting this spending plan together. In the midst of dealing with the ripple effects of COVID-19 pandemic and in the face of numerous fiscal uncertainties, our team has put together a responsible, realistic budget proposal that tackles our financial issues head-on, is responsive to lingering uncertainties, and positions us for a better future. This is a plan that puts the needs of Monroe County residents first, reflects our values, and provides funding for our priorities and sets us on a path to rebuild. This is a responsible plan for uncertain times. The state is facing unprecedented fiscal challenges. Losses in sales taxes, income taxes, and other revenues. And that's translating into a loss of state aid that's affecting county and local budgets across the state. Our budget is no different. This year, recognizing the uncertainty ahead, my administration took quick action to address what we knew was going to be an ongoing problem. We took steps to minimize the impact of revenue cuts by implementing a hiring freeze. We made mid-year budget cuts across county departments. We froze our cash capital projects, and we acted quickly and decisively in order to head off the potential of an oncoming fiscal crisis. We were able to do that while still responding to our public health crisis because of the CARES funding allocated to Monroe County. Those critical resources were used to fund our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The testing, tracing, sanitation, and other public health and public safety needs. The PPE for businesses and restaurants, families, essential workers, child care providers, and schools. The grants for small businesses and funding to help our residents in need to avoid eviction and foreclosure. All needs that weren't imaginable when the 2020 budget was adopted nearly a year ago. We're also working with our municipal partners to help them cover their COVID-19 related costs as well. In making the difficult decisions and adjusting our spending throughout 2020, we remain conscious of the fact that these challenges will not disappear on January 1st, 2021. Budgeting is always a multi-year effort, and that is truer now than it's ever been. Overall, the 2021 proposed budget calls for $1.2 billion in spending. That is an increase of just under 0.4%, the lowest spending increase since 2016, and less than a third of the rate of inflation. This is essentially a flat budget. This proposed budget lowers the county property tax rate by 26 cents to an average of $8.53 per thousand of taxable value, an important recognition of the stress and uncertainty faced by home and property owners at this time too. This is the largest decrease in the county tax rate in almost 20 years. We were able to do that while committing to fiscal responsibility and cleaning up some of the budgetary games and one-shot accounting tricks from the past. First, we're taking one of the most notorious chargebacks off of people's tax bills, the snow and ice chargeback, a quote-unquote below-the-line fee that put the cost for snow and ice removal on county roads outside of the general levy. That fee is now gone. So instead of charging property tax and then charging property owners separately for making sure county roads are safe in the wintertime, we rolled the plowing and salting back into the tax levy right where it belongs. Not only was that a past practice that was unfair, it let prior administrations hide a tax hike by calling it a fee. That will stop now. As a result, the overall charge under the line of county services to localities will drop by an average of 12% on the 2021 tax bill. We're also starting to phase out the sale of delinquent tax liens, a scheme from the past that helped county budgets but hurt people, families, and neighborhoods and our property values. Tax lien sales worsened problems with crumbling, vacant zombie homes in our neighborhoods and stymied homeowners struggling to pay their bills to catch up and stay in their homes. We are on track to eliminate them completely by 2022. Importantly, this budget proposal is well within the bounds of both the state's tax levy cap and the Monroe County Taxpayer Protection Act. A portion of our fund balance has been assigned to addressing future losses as a result of COVID-19. We will utilize some of those funds next year to weather the uncertainties that the pandemic continues to bring our revenues in 2021. This proposed budget is our blueprint as we continue to respond and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. This plan keeps our commitment to supporting children and families, to investing in economic and workforce development, to confronting the opioid crisis, to addressing long-standing issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to setting us on a course towards sustainability, and to preserving our quality of life and delivering government services our residents depend on. This budget puts the needs of our community first and reflects our community values. While being mindful of our uncertainties, we've still been able to make some new and critical investments in vital county services and programs. These priorities were recommended earlier this year in the Monroe County Transition Report, the county's first community stakeholder-driven effort in 3 decades to look at reshaping the county government. Despite challenging times, I remain committed to bringing a new, more responsive government to the residents of Monroe County, and this proposed budget reflects that commitment. So a few additional highlights of the budget include a commitment to supporting our children and families. The pandemic has made it clear that our children and families need our support. We know that earlier the young children receive interventions, the better prepared they are for later success. Recognizing that, we will enhance our early intervention services by adding 3 new health service coordinators to better connect families in need with the services that are offered. We're also increasing pay for all service coordinators so we keep and attract well-trained employees. And we're bringing on a customer service provider who is going to help close the gap for families who miss out on these vital interventions because they need something as simple as transportation. With preschool special education, we're boosting the payment rate for occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and other medical and educational interventions by 5%. To help bring reimbursement rates closer to the cost of providing those services. The proposed budget takes additional steps to boost our Child Protective Services unit, but this budget goes well beyond just funding. Although it fully funds all caseworker positions and it also takes affirmative steps to assure high-quality abuse investigations. We are contracting with the Bavona Child Advocacy Center to act as a second set of eyes and conduct more interviews in suspected cases of child abuse. We're taking a new approach to employee training by consistently reviewing casework, identifying weaknesses, and intervening swiftly with targeted training. And we're making sure our caseworkers can move faster to protect children by ensuring that they can call for immediate mental health, alcohol, and substance abuse assessments while they're out in the field. We're also taking a step toward ensuring equity in the system by ensuring that race and ethnicity are not factors if a decision must be made to separate a child from their home. Under child care, there are still a lot of people that we know who are working from home. Many others are still out of work. And the truth is that this continuing pandemic is concealing the depth of our need for affordable, quality, reliable child care. But we know demand will grow as the economy rebounds and more parents continue to head back to work into their offices. The 2021 proposed budget looks to meet post-pandemic demand and react to this community's needs. We are adding roughly $180,000 to our child care commitment, bringing our total financial support to over $1 million above the state mandated requirement. At the same time, we're slashing the parent fee for child care by 60%, down to 10%. That is the lowest amount allowed under state regulations. If we are going to rebound in a way that works for all residents of Monroe County, we must not allow a lack of access to quality, affordable child care be a barrier between families and employment. I've also said it many times, but the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many of the underlying problems that exist in our community. It has forced people into isolation in ways like we've never seen before. And we know that addiction thrives in isolation. Whether it's opioids, alcohol, or other drugs, the COVID-19 pandemic has worsened ongoing problems with addiction for countless people and families in Monroe County and across the state. Vital sources of emotional and spiritual support have been reduced, leaving many in recovery or struggling with their disease to shoulder the stress and anxiety of this pandemic on their own, and that can make it hard to stay sober. We must treat this crisis as the public health emergency that it truly is. The proposed 2021 budget fully funds the new 8-member Improving Addiction Coordinating Care Team, known as IMPACT, led by the county's first ever Addiction Services Director, Dr. Tisha Smith. Hired roughly 6 weeks ago, Dr. Smith has already hit the ground running, connecting with people and making her presence known in neighborhoods hit the hardest by addiction. As Dr. Smith begins to fill out the IMPACT team, Monroe County will have a hands-on, proactive approach to fighting the addiction epidemic that has impacted people and families for too long. The team will coordinate addiction services and care to bring a comprehensive, multifaceted program to the community, and they will proactively help those most closely affected by the opioid epidemic, bringing services directly to those who need it most and asking them to come to the bringing services directly to them as opposed to asking them to come to us. In addition to improving our response to addiction, we're maintaining our commitment to standing up the forensic intervention team to a 24/7 operation so that the right help comes when 911 is called for mental hygiene cases. To do this, I'll be introducing legislation to the county legislature to accept a Department of Justice grant. The Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program, embedding clinicians in law enforcement agencies grant, was awarded to Monroe County in the amount of $653,000. This grant can be used for programs that offer specialized training for public safety officials and mental health providers in order to respond appropriately to individuals with mental illness, which has been a priority of my administration for the last several months. From the outset, a core priority of the administration has been to ensure that county government reflects the diversity of our community and serves the entire community equitably. Too often, we've seen the systemic and institutional inequities that exist, which make it more critical than ever before that we take proactive steps to challenge the status quo. Fully funding our new Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is the first step in creating a more diverse and inclusive county government. This department, led by the Chief Diversity Officer, will assist all county offices and departments recruit and retrain employees from historically underrepresented groups. It will review and adjust as necessary all county policies and procedures to ensure an equitable, diverse, and inclusive environment. An MWBE contract specialist will help to expand efforts to involve historically underrepresented groups in Monroe County procurement, and will review and monitor county contracts and procurement procedures to ensure entities doing business with the county are inclusive and diverse. The department will develop and enforce the diversity action plan for all other county departments. And it will evaluate options for implementing recommendations that will be made by the Race Commission. We continue to see high unemployment numbers as a result of the local economic shutdown from COVID-19. But as more people seek to return to work, we're finding the opportunities and skill sets are not matching up. To improve job linkage and job training readiness, we are merging the county's divisions of economic development and workforce development into one. These two concepts are directly linked, and joining these divisions together will help us make key connections between employers and employees. So we're retooling and strengthening our workforce development training program with MCC under the new rebranded Empower. This program aims at bringing workers displaced by the economic downturn into sustainable, rewarding career paths in essential industries. From healthcare aides and IT technicians to manufacturing workers, contractors, auto mechanics, and construction professionals. These are jobs that are in demand, and the careers that Empower will help people prepare for. Too often we approach job training backwards. We train people, and then we hope that there's jobs out there for them to land in. But through an expansion of this program, we're going to be able to match our training efforts to the needs of the market by providing real training for real jobs and real opportunities. Protecting the environment is key to maintaining our quality of life and preserving natural resources for future generations. Earlier this year, the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee was formed, and the Climate Smart Communities Pledge for Sustainability and Climate Action. This budget proposes $200,000 to begin planning future sustainability projects for county government and operations. It proposes $100,000 to study expanding access to broadband for underserved rural and urban communities. This will help us to bridge the digital divide, something this pandemic has proven we need to do now more than ever before. $200,000 is also included to begin the process of building a new comprehensive master plan to outline our vision for the community's future. Think of this, the last time Monroe County had a comprehensive master plan to lay out the framework for our future was 1979, before I was even born. And I think it's fair to say our community has changed a lot since 1979 and has changed a lot in just the last year. Overall, this is a balanced, fiscally responsible spending plan that funds critically needed social and emergency services and quality of life services our residents expect. It is responsible and responsive to our uncertainties and positions us for future growth and continued success. This is a responsible plan for uncertain times. The truth is that budgeting responsibly doesn't always mean to dramatically add spending or dramatically cut spending. But it does mean spending the money that we have in the most responsible way. And the most responsible way is recognizing the impact that spending and programs and taxes have on people. This proposed budget recognizes the stresses that the COVID-19 pandemic has put on individuals, families, and businesses. It's a spending plan that recognizes that now, maybe more than ever, the work the county does, the services it provides, the support that it provides people are also critically important. And the budget recognizes that we cannot exacerbate stress by adding excessive costs to residents of Monroe County. This proposed budget holds spending growth down. It lowers the tax rate by 26 cents and still maintains focus on priorities of economic resurgence, equity, inclusion, sustainability, and supporting our families and children. Our recovery from COVID-19 isn't going to be a one-year problem, maybe not even a two-year problem. I'm proud of what we've been able to do in the face of this uncertainty. And I realize that if the revenues decline again, if state aid cuts persist into the second, third, and fourth quarters of next year, that we will be back at the table, making increasingly difficult decisions about how and where to spend, cut, or invest. But we know whatever challenge our community faces, When we tackle our problems together, we will come out of this stronger and better. And so with that, we can, the team up here can take any questions that you all might have.
Adam, you were born after 1979?
I was. 1980, my friend. Yeah. Oh,
I'm sorry.
right.
That's right.
Yeah, no,
Sorry, Mary, I should have just gotten right to it.
that's okay.
Adam, when people look at their tax bill next year, they're not going to see that charge back for snow plowing? Is that right?
That's right. So what you're going to see on the tax bill next year is a 26% reduction on the property tax rate, and then you will also see a 12% reduction in the below the line chargeback that's related to the snow and ice removal. So there's going to be a reduction in both spots on the tax bill.
But are they still going to pay for snow removal? It will just be in the regular county property tax?
That is correct. Yep. Yep.
So
Where it should be.
for an average person, that's really no different.
What's that?
For an average person, that's really no different.
Well, well, you still have to pay for the service, but think about this. You removed the multi-million-dollar charge for snow and ice removal that was below the line, took 12% off of that, and still managed to cut the tax rate by 26 cents. So it will be included in the property tax levy.
So expanding the FIT team to a 24/7 operation has been something that we've talked about a lot over the past couple of months. So why was that important for you to include, and is there any kind of timeline that people can expect with that?
Look, this is important to me for a number of reasons. You know, I said earlier this year, a couple months ago, that I firmly believe that in order to be responsive to the community, the right type of help needs to arrive when someone needs help or is in crisis. You know, when you call 911 for a fire truck shows up. If you call 911 for a medical emergency, an EMT shows up. When you call 911 for almost any other reason, a police officer shows up. And I think that further investments in programs like the FIT team, in mental health and substance and abuse support, are areas of help that can be provided to people who are in crisis that can actually help move the needle, protect them, keep them safe, and put them on a path to success. This is important.
Timeline on that, as far as you wanted to get that grant and
Right.
legislation?
We're just receiving the grant. We'll put the legislation into the county legislature.
So is the response going to be separate? Is the FIT response going to be separate from law enforcement? Because that's what a lot of people have asked for.
Right. Well, that's what we have to work out. Do you want to come talk about how that would work?
So as we look at the mental health system, no parts of the system work in a vacuum. There are going to be occurrences where we are going to partner with law enforcement, but we're taking the first 90 days from the county executive's initial announcement and looking at our entire system, making sure that we're starting with the call to 911. Where should that go first? Should it go to FIT? Should it go to law enforcement? Should it go to a crisis line? And then we're looking at all of our response systems across the entire mental health system. It could be the mobile crisis team, it could be the FIT team, it could be law enforcement. So this is really how we engage and work together to make sure that we get the right response based on the call that's coming in.
Is that happening now?
That's happening now, yes.
And you said it's a 90-day roll-up?
Correct. And then we are also partnering with the Race Commission for more of those longer-term goals. The county executive has mentioned that we're looking at the entire $40 million budget. So that's going to really tap into those long-term services in both mental health and substance use disorder. So it's an entire systems look.
I'm sorry, you don't have it, it'll roll out in 90 days, or in 90 days you'll have a plan for when you'll roll out?
It's a two-phase process. So the 90 days is to look at what are those immediate changes that we need to make now. And that's starting with those 911 calls, how we triage those, and who responds. And then we're looking at those longer-term goals. There's $40 million that are invested in behavioral health, in our behavioral health system and substance use disorder system. We want to make sure that those are responsive to the needs of the community. So that longer-term goal is our partnership with the Race Commission and what we're going to see in the out years beyond that 90 days.
Adam, how much is the county budgeting for in-sales tax revenue for 2021, and how does that compare to the budget from?
Sure. Bob, do you want to talk about specifics?
Good morning. So for our sales tax budget next year, it's pretty much a continuation of what we're seeing this year. So budget to budget, it's about a 5.1% reduction. It's just over $149 million for this year was $158 million.
How does the tax levy compare year to year?
From 20 to 21, overall, there's about a net $6 million increase. You'll see about 11.4 in change increase in the general levy, but you're also going to see about a $5.2 million reduction in our charges to localities. So if you net those two amounts together, it's about a $6 million overall increase.
While you're up there, talk about the fund balance, so using some of the fund balance to offset sales tax. What is the effect of that long term? Does that go into the savings now? How much savings is there, and how long can
Sure.
How long can you use the fund balance?
Sure. This is a good strategy, and as the county executive pointed out, budgeting is really a multi-year process, right? You can't just look at 2021. You have to keep your eye on the current year, and this county executive is actually looking 2 years out in the future as well. We have, earlier this year, the county had assigned a portion of its fund balance specifically for revenue losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are using a portion of those assigned fund balance for the 21 budget. It's about $11.8 million. This is a good plan in that we are not using all of the assigned fund balance for COVID-19 related revenue losses. We have additional funds that, if this pandemic continues on for a second or even a third year, we'll have an opportunity to appropriate funds in the 22 budget as well. So it's a prudent use of fund balance that was designated specifically for COVID-19 related revenue losses.
Is there a way to replenish that? You don't want to empty the well.
Oh, that's always my plan. You know, I don't like to lose money. You know, in government, the goal is to shoot for zero, right? Balance at the end of the year. But honestly, my target from year to year is about a $5 to $10 million general fund surplus. And this has been a tough year. We've made a lot of changes related to the pandemic, but at least right now, we're at least on track to break even, and we're still working to hopefully come out a little ahead.
Will the county be selling any tax liens in 2024?
Well, actually, that's almost a trick question because we do have a plan to phase out the sale of tax liens, as the county executive mentioned. Right now, however, the state of New York, through the governor's executive order, has put a moratorium on the sale of delinquent tax liens. Originally, it was a moratorium through October 4th, but that was extended for 30 days, and then come November 3rd, it got extended again. So right now, there's a moratorium through December 4th. Will that be extended another time? That's yet to be seen.
Hey, Bob, I'd like to ask about child care, if you don't mind.
It might be me or Corinda, too. Yeah.
Sure. So you talked about a reduction in the parent fee for daycare. How much is that going to save a parent or a family in real dollars?
At the microphone.
So the parent fee is based on the family's income. So on average, a little over $200 on average, but it's going to vary from family to family.
Per year?
Per year, yeah.
Is the county's workforce overall about the same size as last year? Just with everything that went on earlier with the pandemic and sales taxes, about the same as it was?
Actually, when you get into the 21 budget, and by the way, we'll have an electronic copy on the website, and we do have some flash drives if you really are interested in taking one back to the office right now. When you look at the 21 budget, you'll see a summary of authorized positions. Headcount is going up, roughly 77.5 positions. I will say, however, there is an overwhelmingly grant support behind those positions. The bulk of our staff increase is within our public defender's office and our conflict defender's office. I believe you all know the state of New York settled a lawsuit, which I'm going to botch the name of that lawsuit, Herring, something like that. The state of New York is committed to funding offices of the public defender and conflict defender throughout the state, and through their Office of Indigent Legal Services, OILS as we call it. So there's a lot of state funding behind the staff increases. You'll see a few other staff positions in other departments within our human services. Our human services gets quite a bit of state reimbursement, state and federal reimbursement. And then you'll see just a few positions here and there in some other departments as well.
The hiring increases that were put in place earlier this year, are those still frozen, so to speak, or are those vacancies?
We still have about the same number of vacancies. I tend to call it a soft hiring freeze because there are some critical positions we got to have people for over at Monroe Community Hospital, Child Protective Services. So it's not a complete freeze. I call it a soft freeze.
Any potential layoffs?
There are actually some potential layoffs in this budget. There's about 4. There's some restructuring over in our planning department. We are combining 2 divisions into 1. And I believe you all know within our Board of Elections, they saw some additional staff positions earlier this year. Since that time, we have a new elections commissioner and deputy commissioner, and they have all been talking. And of course, I love to have some budget certainty as well. But after their discussions, they realized they could reduce their headcount by about 3 positions.
Will the public feel any impact of the changes from last year to this year, do you think?
Our goal was to try to make sure that the challenges faced by the community, particularly as the result of COVID-19, that those challenges are met head-on by county government. So that's why we have targeted investments into the opioid response plan, child care needs, economic development needs, job training needs. And we did that while also reducing the tax rate and also removing one of the below-the-line chargebacks so that we can be responsive and reflective of the needs of taxpayers, property taxpayers across the community, but also responsive to the needs of individuals who are still recovering and still suffering from the pandemic that we face. We put in a number of budgetary measures earlier this year to address this year's budget deficit as a result of the decrease in spending, and we've managed that. We've managed that deficit this year, and with the vacant positions, with the cash capital management programs, and the mid-year budget reductions, we've been able to manage that deficit in a responsible way. And this budget prepares us to be able to continue to do that next year if the conditions warrant it.
Adam, you said the tax rate is going down, but the budget's about flat.
Yep.
Why is the tax rate going down?
Why is the tax rate going down? Well, because, first of all, we lowered the tax rate because we also wanted to, I said earlier this year, when I first laid out the fact that we were going to have a budget deficit, that you can't tax your way out of this problem. Asking people in our community to pay more and more and more isn't going to work. So I thought it was important to provide relief by lowering the tax rate and also removing the below-the-line chargeback.
But is it going down because assessed value is higher, because there's some other revenue that's coming in?
Oh, gotcha. I can have Bob answer that question too. Yep.
So there's actually a couple easy things to say about taxable values in the county. A number of towns have put off their reassessments due to the pandemic. However, not all of them, but we are seeing both an increase in property values due to just honestly the robust real estate market that we've seen for the past 2 years. And because some of these towns have pushed off their reassessments, there are 14 towns now that are below 100% equalization. There were 10 last year, and the 10 last year are even further below. So it was a 5.95% increase in equalized taxable values. That's pretty big. Monroe County hasn't seen an increase like that since the early 2000s. So with that kind of increase in taxable values, the county executive was able to bring down the tax rate quite a bit.
Question. Either you or Bob. Excuse me. What is not getting money spent on it this year?
Okay. So this year, you're talking about this year's budget deficit, 2021. Well, it holds, most departments are essentially held flat. That's why it's a flat budget. You know, it's a 0.38% increase in spending. Most departments are held flat. And, you know, this is, I think, a responsible way to approach this moving forward. But, you know, we have to look long term and think about what's sustainable in the future as well. And so right now we have hundreds of county positions that were vacant this year, right, because we had that hiring freeze. Things are taking longer to get done. Services take longer to be able to provide. Repairs, right, we talk about cash capital investments, take longer to get done. Those are some of the pains that are going to be involved in this. So we have to continue to budget responsibly so that we don't find ourselves in tens of millions of dollars in budget deficits, but we manage those deficits throughout the year. We were very successful in doing that this year. I think this budget is responsible plan to do that next year. But obviously, we don't know what the future is going to bring. So we have to be able to budget responsibly, which is what this budget does, to give us the ability to respond to the pandemic as it changes.
I guess my question was, sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to belabor this.
I don't know if I, yeah, go ahead.
I guess my question was, if the budget is flat and you're actually spending more money on certain things, which you highlighted, it means that some things don't get as much money, and I'm wondering what that is.
Well, it's about doing more with less, right? Oh, but Bob, we'll go through some of the numbers. We do have reductions in debt service, and we have some reductions in other places. But but essentially, like what I said before, a proper spending plan and planning for the future doesn't always involve increasing your total dollar spending, decreasing it, or what it really does is talks about how are you spending the dollars that you have now and how are you retooling them to better meet the needs of the community. So that's what we've done with each one of our departments is we go through and we look and say, like workforce and economic development is a great example. As you look at that and say, okay, we were doing job training backwards all these years. We were training people for jobs and then putting them out in the market and hoping those jobs exist. By merging those two departments, we're able to do it better. So you're not spending a lot more money. What you're doing is you're reforming it so that it works better and has a better impact. You know, this is always about impact. And I talk about that a lot. You know, I'm a big believer that you really need to go through your programs, your spending priorities, and figure out how are you impacting the community. Not just doing things that sound good, but how are you moving the needle forward? And that's what the Empower program is all about. It's about changing the way we do it so that it better impacts the community. So, anything else? Yes. Yep. We're still holding number because we're still in 2020, so we're still managing that deficit this year. Yep.
Burnout in any areas? This would be what?
In the short term, no, but I will say this, it's not sustainable. Okay, so while we have a lot of employees here who are working incredibly hard, and you see them in every department, you know, there will come a point in time where that's not sustainable. And so we need to manage, that's why we need to manage this. So that's why there isn't wholesale reductions of them in the next year's budget, but we will manage that as the year goes on. Yeah.
City taxpayers, we get our own city tax bill.
Sure.
What do you say to city taxpayers when they open up their county tax bill come January, you know, first or second? Just about how this county bill affects them, city residents, because we still get, you know, a separate city tax bill.
I'm not sure I understand the question, because I know like town residents will get their tax bill too, and there's a school tax bill. I mean, it's tax bill, but I believe it's the same as across each town in the city, in that there's the reduction in the tax rate, and there's the reduction in the below-line services. That'll be cross jurisdictions.
So when I receive my bill in January, it will be slightly lower.
Well, we're dealing with averages, so yeah.
Okay.
we're dealing with averages.
We go. Follow up, or you had said Bob can go through
Go
some
ahead.
of the reductions. I just want to revisit. You had said there's hundreds of positions vacant. Can you also address how
There's
much
several hundred.
is payroll is, or how much is being saved based on?
That's the, you know what he's asking.
So one of the budgetary increases for '21 is related to our staff. That's through pay raises. Our contractually, we have unions, so we have contractual obligations to meet. So we do have increase in payroll costs, about 2.8%. A lot of that is within our sheriff's office. The jailers, by contract, had much lower pay raises for the first several years of their contract, and then a 7.5% increase for 2021. But this plan has also made reductions in a number of areas. The county executive mentioned reductions in debt service. There's about a $4.5 million reduction in our debt service. That was all planned, and planned over the course of several years. We have reductions, and of course all the department heads cringe when I talk about this, because we all, the staff and I in the budget office meet with each of the departments to go through their requests and lean on them a little heavy sometimes to reduce their requests for supplies and materials or their contractual costs. So we've been able to work with our department heads to bring down by $5.1 million in contractual services. Offset, by the way, this is the first year, not the first year, the county is once again getting back to budgeting for its hotel tax distributions. They have not been part of the county budget in probably, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 years, give or take. So that's actually adding to our contractual services, but that's a little outside this conversation. Our department heads worked really hard with us to reduce their cost. Significant amounts of capital equipment were purchased in 2020, later in the year, because we kind of froze a lot of those lines earlier. But as we got into September and October, worked with the departments on their critical needs for asset equipment. Most of those are one-time expenses. So we don't have to account as much in '21 for those. So through a lot of work with our department heads on balancing their needs and their abilities to offset their pay increases with supply and contract reductions is how we were able to achieve a balanced budget. And of course, as I said before, the prudent use of fund balance to partially offset the reductions in state aid and sales tax, which nobody likes to use fund balance, but at least we're using it for two revenues that will recover in the upcoming year or two. So that's not a bad strategy. And I'm sorry, Brian, you did have a very specific question on staff. Did I address it?
I think so. I was wondering on state aid, what are you assuming?
Well, we have to hedge our bets in this budget, okay? Right now, the state is withholding aid payments and other reimbursements to the tune of 20% of our claims. So the '21 budget assumes that state withholding will continue through the end of their fiscal year, March 31st. It probably won't be until February or March we find out if those withholdings are going to be made permanent or not. Right now, we are leaning towards they're not going to be made permanent, but we had to hedge our bets in that regard.
Okay, thanks everybody. Any other questions, you can follow up with me.
All right, thank you.